Asia chapter of PR Network. On behalf of PR Network and Telum, again, we would like to welcome you to this webinar. Allow me to use a couple of minutes to introduce PRN to you as a starter. We currently have PR Network. It's an independent network of global, of local agencies across the world. We currently have 26 member agencies globally, founded by profound PR professionals. Each member agency has exclusivity of their respective regions. And together we share a lot of market intelligence, like what we are going to do today. And also it's always for the good of the industry as a whole. Today, we are happy to partner with Telum to dive deeper into a recent Telum APAC journalism survey for 2022. Looking forward to share more on media preferences and also the latest PR practices across the markets. Thank you again, and off to you, Patri. Should we start the PowerPoint slides?
Yes, we should start the PowerPoint slide. So thank you for the introduction, Belinda. And Heiko and I have known each other for several years. We haven't seen each other literally in a few years since COVID. And I'm so happy that Heiko and Telum did this survey, because I think COVID has affected all of us, you know, in terms of what we do professionally, as well as for the media and how they operate. And here's going to be that presentation from Heiko, where he's going to cover what they've been doing, how COVID has impacted them, and what's shifted them in their work.
Well, thank you very much, Mi. Yeah, we haven't seen each other for a while, but I think that will change soon. I hope to be in Bangkok a little sooner rather than later. Good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. Obviously, this is online, so I'm very cautious that people can join from anywhere in the world. Telum did this survey of Asia Pacific journalists sometime towards the end of last year. So we commenced the survey at this in November 2021 and concluded at the very early stage of January 2022. So we wanted to find out how journalists are now working and how they are looking forward to working in the future. And also understand a little bit about their careers and how the prospects of their careers in Asia Pacific. We specifically covered 10 different markets within the Telum scope. So East Asia, in East Asia, we have China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. In Southeast Asia, we have Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, that's right. And ANZ, we have Australia and New Zealand, of course. So this survey, Shah, I think you can move on to the upcoming, the further slides. And this survey actually had 224, or rather 1,113 journalists from APAC submitting their answers. 224 are from Australia, 138 from Indonesia, 134 are journalists in Hong Kong and Macau combined. 118 journalists from Singapore, 102 from Taiwan, 61 from mainland China, and the rest are New Zealand, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and others. So there's quite a lot and good spread across different genres and different markets. Just to reiterate in terms of how we covered this, the 34% were from general news, 15% for lifestyle, 10% from business, 6% from tech, and a lot more. So we wanted, like I said, to dig into more of the more common challenges of journalism, you know, post-COVID, or rather when we conducted this, COVID was still, you know, it's still there, well, it's still here right now, but there were changes in terms of how people were getting used to working. So, you know, how we may not actually have left COVID in 2021, we found out that, you know, the media industry has approached 2022 with a sense of cautious optimism, because, you know, the virus continued to spread, and, you know, there are concerns around fake news and digital disruption, as so with geopolitical tensions as well. So you can see here from this slide the results of how people have said that they're cautiously optimistic about the media industry and identified that fake news and COVID-19 are two of the most rampant issues that they are worried about. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Just to also share that this is actually results from the entire survey and not specific to a specific market. We'll go into that a little bit later on. And COVID-19 has been seen as obviously to impact the media industry, but people who answered feel that journalism, it has actually reinforced the importance of journalism in 2021, 2022. So, and looking ahead to 2022, 71% of the respondents rate as COVID-19 to still be their largest challenge. And over the next year, which was actually in 2022, we learned that people were looking to still stay in their same role. We wanted to, like I said at the start, that people were we wanted to find out if journalists were happy to remain in journalism, because there is the state of the Great Resignation and the trend of Great Resignation that has seen record numbers of workers quitting their roles around the world, and because obviously the pandemic has caused them to reassess their jobs, work-life balance, their personal goals, etc. So what we found out is that 50% are looking to stay in the same role though, and 13% of those say that they are looking to stay in the same role, but they're just switching companies. But you see that they are still looking to remain in journalism, or rather journalism largely. Next slide, please. We have also asked journalists what they think are the most important skills that journalists should have at their fingertips right now. And it's good to also learn the fact that news judgment and verification of news is still seen as the most important value right now. I think this ties in really relevantly to what they've said about fake news. And the rampance of fake news in the region, so judgment and verification is important. But when we actually asked, so if you looked at the graph on the right, not yet, yes, thank you. On the right, we asked what are the important skills that journalists should have in the next 3 to 5 years. So looking ahead, and we've learned that they've identified that digital skills and such as SEO have been, one of the most important skills for them to pick up next 3 to 5 years. While news judgment verification and curiosity is still quite a large number of is still quite a large chunk of the answers. Digital skills have been identified as important for the journalism profession. Next slide, please. We have also asked what are the biggest challenges that as part of the media that they are expecting, and as I said earlier, that COVID-19 is obviously been identified as still the most important issue for them. But again, bearing in mind that these are answers, or rather we asked this at the end of 2021, and the situation might have changed quite a little bit now. Next slide, please. So the left slide, the left side, I think is repetitive, and yeah, I think, sorry, let's move on to the next slide just to save time as well. One of the biggest bit of this survey was to understand how the communications industry is to work with journalists, and if you can see on the left-hand side, the graph actually showed that exclusivity of press releases and pitches are the most important aspects of media relations when speaking with a journalist, and they prefer direct pitches rather than general pitches to the media. And to reiterate that point, if offered an exclusive, 44% have said that they are very likely to cover the story, and that's a very good metric in PR, I'm sure. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. We've also asked what should PR people send journalists, and they've identified that press releases still very, very relevant. I think a lot of people will be people on this call today will be happy to hear that you know, writing those press releases is not gone futile. But with that as well, you can see that the rest of the answers are quite close to each other. With images being second, and also quotes and statements being quite high up in the list. We wanted to also understand if the journalists were using social media to engage with communications professionals, and 45% of the journalists that we've surveyed said that they use LinkedIn to communicate with journalists. WhatsApp has been identified to also be a tool that is used quite widely. And obviously we surveyed journalists in East Asia, so platforms like WeChat and Weibo are also in there, but Weibo is we only have 1% of them saying that they use them. 71% have said that email is still the best way to pitch, with 16% then said that they will actually respond to text messages, for example, on WhatsApp, WeChat, Line, Viber, depending on which markets you are operating in. Next slide, please. The media has also identified that social media has grown in importance. And they have said over here that, you know, in terms of when we ask them which of the following media channels do you expect to grow in the next 1 year, social media have received the highest number of picks, and online publications as well. So going digital is still the strategy moving forward for the media, it seems, and that has been going on for a number of years in this region. When we asked them if social media and the proliferation of digital channels impacted the need for quality journalism, they said that yes, social media has helped to reinforce the importance of journalism rather than it being a pressure on them for poorer news or poorer media quality. So it's helped the media industry, it seems. And the next slide, I think this might be my last slide. And yeah, and I'll hand over the time to Nui to take the conversation further. And I believe the next slide is with Jackie.
All right. You said you were going to fly through, so you did literally.
Yes, I did.
So now what we're going to do is dive down into the other markets that are here. And I want to introduce my colleague, Jackie, who's out of China.
Hello.
Hi, Jackie. If
Hello,
you could,
Yeah.
if you could just do a short introduction about your organization and then get into the discussion with Heigl.
Okay. Comlao is a B2B client-focused marketing agency, full service agency, serving a lot of manufacturing companies like Siemens, Honeywell, Dow, DuPont. So that's our typical clients, and we have 50 people in our team. So that's our okay. So good to see you. Good talk with you. Chat with you about how to run successful media relations in China. And it's very interesting to see the report, and good to see a full picture about how media are evolving in China, media relations evolving in China. So that's cool. That's good.
And Jackie, I think one of our or rather a revelation that we've seen when we surveyed journalists in China was the fact that it was the biggest respondents who said that they were speaking with communications professionals via mobile and online means. 87% of respondents actually said that they connect with journalists via WeChat, actually. In comparison to the rest of Asia Pacific, that was only 66%. I think China has gone way ahead in terms of connecting with PR professionals on digital channels. I believe this is what you've seen as well on the ground, and maybe you can share with me and also the rest of the participants here if that's been effective, and still if that's effective for other regions to speak with China-based journalists through WeChat from their own regions.
Yes. I think it's a quite valid point in your report. I think, yeah, it's true that I think most communication now is happening through WeChat, because WeChat is becoming the most popular communication channel in China. And so that's one reason. And the second reason is because I think the Chinese people are impatient. So if you use email, that means you have to wait. But use WeChat, which means you can contact someone immediately to see the response immediately without waiting too much time. So that's also a reason that people start to use more and more WeChat to communicate with others. Yeah, so that's number one.
That's very interesting though, because the rest of the region have said that emails is actually the most effective channel. Should we then forget about email when speaking with journalists in China at all?
I think for international environment it's still living, but for the local commercial environment, I should say it's dying. It's dying. Yeah, people are seldom using email to communicate now. Yeah, because it's too, how to say, you have to wait. Sometimes we don't have the patience to wait. So only international environment, you talking with international companies still use emails, but I think more and more people are using immediate communication channel.
I actually agree with you, because at Telum Media, we reach out to journalists on a daily basis. And now we've got teams who are based in Hong Kong and China who speak to, mainland China journalists. You can say that they're impatient. I can't.
Exactly, yeah.
But you know, what we've seen is that when we, because we announce moves of journalist movements in China, and you know, news about their work. So when we do that, we found that reaching out to them via email is really slow, and WeChat has you know, sped up the response rate by, you know, probably
exactly.
Perhaps.
Exactly, and WeChat is also replacing exchanging business card. So when people meet with each other for the first time, and the last conversation, the last thing they need to do is exchange WeChat to add on each other on WeChat, to keep in touch by WeChat. So that's becoming a way. But I also I would say WeChat is not just a one-on-one communication; it's also one-to-many. So companies can also, more and more companies are building their public accounts on WeChat, publishing their official news through WeChat, which can be subscribed by people to see the updates every day. So that's also becoming a communication channel for companies to communicate with other people in China. And most media also have built their official WeChat account as a media channel to publish news.
Okay.
So,
one of the things that I think is quite interesting from our survey as well, and perhaps you have experience in this, is the fact that quite a lot of the respondents are asking for data when we actually send pictures, or rather when we actually contact journalists in China. Journalists are asking for data, they're asking for reports and white papers, and this seems to be the things that will help them produce the news in much quicker and faster and more accurate ways. Has this been, you know, your experience, and also grown in importance from your experience? I
did see this, but I see people, the media, of course, there are two types of media. One is a media with their own, I'd say, the very high quality media. They need to have their exclusive report without reporting other people's press release. So they are not interested in press release. So those are the high quality media. And I think what they need is to digest the white papers and have their own insights on that. So that's why they need. But for some lower quality media, I think white papers are becoming a kind of hook for them to increase the subscribers. So normally they have a way that they publish part of that. If that's interesting, they would ask them to subscribe and remain their contact information to get this white paper. So that's becoming a prize to attract people. So for those media, so that's why white paper is becoming important, because that's high quality. That's high quality with data, with insights. So I see that's a key reason.
To just go back to the point of that we made earlier on WeChat, I just managed to see a statistic on the report here that on email, while the rest of Asia Pacific is 70%, in China it's actually 30%. So it's actually a huge difference, and I think this gives a good advice to us all when reaching out to journalists in China that email perhaps just does not work.
It's not working. It's not working.
Let's change the way we're working with journalists over there.
It's true. I think I would agree with the point you raised in the report, from the report.
Okay. I think next we're going to be moving on to the Hong Kong market. Thank you for that insight, Jackie, about how do we work with the Chinese reporters, and also input as well as from Heiko. Next slide, please. All right, so next is the Creative Consulting Group, but I believe Belinda said PN is going to be participating. Belinda, is that correct?
Oh, I think both of us.
Okay,
yeah,
very good.
Yeah, both of us. We're both from Hong Kong. Both
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So next we're going to go into the Hong Kong market. So please, Belinda and PN.
Yep. So just a little bit introduction of us. We have been based in Hong Kong for some 20 years. So we have been mainly B2B as well, but because Hong Kong is quite a small market compared to with China, so we are kind of like a diversified agency. But still, our main client group still real estate, finance, more service industry, and technology as well. So happy to talk more about the Hong Kong market with PN and Heiko. Maybe just to raise a question first, I guess in recent years, we are seeing more and more concerns among the clients, especially on the political change that may affect the media practice locally as well. Heiko, are there any statistics from the report that reflect some media concerns as well?
I think the biggest concern that we have for Hong Kong is the fact that we are losing journalists in the market. I think specifically in 2021, I think it was a Bloomberg report which said that 1,200 journalists have lost their jobs in Hong Kong. And you mentioned it, Belinda, it's not like Hong Kong is a very big market. So 1,200 is actually a large chunk of the journalism population. While the report, also reported the fact, that journalists are looking to stay in their role and all that. Our deduction is the fact that, journalists are also concerned about keeping their roles within the journalism community. However, we do sense a bit of optimism from the journalist community there as well. 33% of them are optimistic about the outlook of the economy. So hopefully that will boost also their positions within the market and also their careers. Telemedia is in the business to make sure that both industries of communications and the media prosper. So we are concerned about this and also at the same time looking to do as much as we can. In one of the remits of Telemedia is also with our job site, which is a complimentary service. And what's good to see over the past 6 months or so, that there have been hirings going on in the market in Hong Kong. So hopefully the situation is changing ever so slightly, even if it's actually it's at a slower rate than what we want to see.
I think we can easily say each of them, both mainstream or trade media organizations, they have shrunk by 20%, 25%, maybe over the past period of time.
Yeah.
So it also means affecting our industry and also clients is that in the future, in the past, maybe there are like 5 journalists covering one sector, now maybe 2.
Yeah.
Or 1. And maybe a lot of the media resources are shared, meaning in the past, they may be just following one sector, but now they may be following 3 at the same time. It means the media landscape and our landscape as well, we are always competing on time, on space, on newspaper, or online media. Now it's even more competitive. Yeah. So in that sense, I really think what we are doing now currently, going back to what Jackie just mentioned as well, we need to push out information more instantly. We need to keep the momentum going. But just for Hong Kong, we use WhatsApp more.
Yeah. So but that is consistent with the region overview of the report, which says that text messaging is actually really helpful. Yes, email might still be quite the dominant way to operate in a lot of markets, but I think text messaging just supplements that quite a bit. And going back to your point earlier on the fact that in some sectors, rather we now see journalists covering more sectors, the media has said that upskilling their teams have been become a lot more important. So I think that is consistent with what you identified there, Belinda, because it means that, rather than someone covering just an aspect of, say, banking and finance news, they now have to diversify and making sure that other parts of finance, because obviously that's broken down to markets, equities, whatever it might be a little bit more. They might be covering a lot more than what they used to. So there's a bit of pressure for journalists there. So it's also then important for us as communicators to be nice to them, understand the situation that they're in, and try to help them with what they need. So in terms of sending information accurately, the data, etc., especially if they're new in the field of the new field that they're taking on, those information I think will help them greatly to help to publish the news that you actually want them to.
Yeah, definitely. I think messaging now has become more important than ever, and also because everyone is competing with time, and also they are monitoring and working with so many content at any single point of time. I think our key role is really to help give them the right and bite-sized information as well, so it's easy to digest. So a little bit different from China market. Maybe they want some like executive summary kind of information as starter instead of a full report. But still, sometimes full report are essential, especially when we are planning for more larger scale stories or exclusive stories.
And the exclusivity has been identified, again, consistent with the rest of the region, as an important aspect to the media in Hong Kong, where if they are offered exclusives, and as you said, there's competitiveness within the comms industry to get news out. There's also competitiveness within the media industry to make sure that they are breaking the exclusives. So getting your news to the right people, or rather to right media, or giving certain media the chance to run certain news first, really helps in getting your stories out there.
Definitely.
Yeah, and in fact, we saw that even with when we're doing a bit of PR for this survey, when we gave a bit of exclusivity to certain media in Hong Kong, that worked out really well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also because of the format of media reporting now. All mainstream, all kinds of media, they have some form of online presence anyway. So instant news is kind of like an expectation for all of them. So imagine when all the media are covering more or less the same thing, they are not missing out the key parts. When there is a breaking news coming out from one of the media, it gives them the spotlight like instantly, if they can do something different and big and breaking news as well. So exclusivity definitely works for Hong Kong market, and it all goes back to the messaging as well and why PR is important. So we come up with the best angle that's attractive to the audience.
Yeah, and that's where you come in to help your clients and companies out there, right?
Yes, I hope we are doing the job good enough.
It also means more work.
Yes, definitely. Much more work now.
Yes. So next slide, please. Next market is going to be Taiwan. And here to speak all together is going to be Heigl, Sharon, and Belinda. Sharon, if you want to give a short introduction about your agency based out of Taiwan.
One change, this part would be with PN. Going with Sharon.
Okay, I will then spotlight PN to then deal with Sharon. Yeah, okay, I'll do that now.
Okay, thank you. The result is very interesting and real. Thank you, your share. My company, three brand and martech consultant, we are more focused on PR tech and marketing digital transformation service now. PR always our important DNA. Please let me answer in Chinese. Penny will help me to transfer my point. Okay?
Sure.
Sure. Thanks, Pian and Sharon. I think maybe before we begin, Sharon, I want to also say that it's very interesting for us to do this in Taiwan because it's something that we've never done before in the market. And one of the biggest thing that we identified, and I don't know whether it is something that you agree, sorry, Pian, this is a very long question. There's the fact that COVID-19 was actually the least of the concern compared to the other regions in Asia Pacific for Taiwan. Why do you think this is so? I'd love to learn from you a little bit more as well.
Okay, the first one question. 就是因为台湾从去年就是7月开始到4月，其实 COVID-19 的确诊率其实都比亚洲各国其实低很多啦。那所以呢，就是我觉得台湾的在这个调查里面，它的媒体关注度的原因低也是在这个地方。那可是，在5月份呢，台湾其实疫情变得非常严重。那就是在这个月，所以我们从这个月开始，我们就开始学习怎么样跟那个病毒共存。那我们现在预计差不多是8、9月份整个会恢复常态。好，那在这个调查里面还有一个部分也蛮有趣的，就是在台湾的这个有关除了说这个关注度很低之外，还有就是台湾大家也发现说为什么台湾对假新闻这么的重视哦，就是因为台湾普遍呢，就是网络的原生媒体在数位化之后，传统的大众媒体他们的可信度跟影响力还是很大，就是非常多的在台湾有这样的一个调查。那台湾的大众媒体他们也是为了捍卫新闻自由，所以呢，就是常常从社群的媒体上面去取材，比如说台湾的记者跟媒体很常呢去社群媒体，不管是 FB 啊，或者是有一些台湾的那种论坛，他们就常会去截取那边的一个新闻来去做一个取材的议题的报道。那呢，就是因为台湾的假新闻通常都是出现在新兴的社群媒体上或者社交的一些软体上，所以它就很常被大众媒体说追踪啊、抨击啊，所以他们的关注度也自然会特别的 就是关注。那这个是在我看到那个报道里面哦，就是跟台湾这两个部分非常的突出不一样的地方，我依据我的观点来做一点解释，这样子。谢谢。
Thank you, Sharon. Let me summarize a little bit on what Sharon just shared. First of all, replying to the questions that Hauki asked before is for the Asia Pacific region, Taiwan media pays the least attention to COVID-19, and what's the reason behind? Sharon shared that compared to Asia Pacific, the Taiwanese press doesn't pay high attention because from last July to this April, the Taiwanese, the rate of COVID-19 actually is relatively low in the Asia Pacific region compared with other countries. So Sharon thinks that it would be the main reason. However, since the confirmed cases was raised in May for this month, so actually the Taiwanese government and they have already started to learn about how to coexist with the COVID-19 and the virus as well. So they are expecting to get back on track in the second half of the year. Another thing that Sharon just shared with us is there is a special finding here from the report that the Taiwanese pays more attention to the fake news.
You're asking about fake news, PN?
Yep, because I just got muted by someone. Yep, so can you all hear me? Yep, okay, let me move forward. So actually they pays more attention to the fake news, which is 11% more. As the reason for the Taiwanese paying this attention to the fake news issues more is because they do believe in and are these are impacted by the native internet media and the digitalized and traditional press. Hence, actually, they are more concerning about protecting the freedom of the press is relatively important to the Taiwanese. So actually they are tend to discuss the issue on social media more. So due to the high concern and the fact that actually the Taiwanese press often draw the materials from the online resources. So actually the news shows a high frequency on the new social media platform and the applications as well. Yep, so that's are the two interested findings that Sharon would like to highlight here.
I think those are very important things to note. But I was also very pulled by the fact that the report suggested that the Taiwanese media actually prefer to be contacted via email, and I wonder whether this is slightly different to China, and what was the difference that how people communications professionals work in China as compared to in Taiwan. Obviously, there are two different, very different, markets. So, is there a way that you feel, Sharon, that works really well when you and your team connect with the media?
OK， 就是在台湾跟大陆真的是有点不太一样哈，就是说台湾目前的记者我们在沟通大量用 LINE， 因为台湾用那个通讯软体，跟大陆是用 WeChat， 台湾是用 LINE， 所以我们都通常给记者的一个沟通讯息，我们都会分好几个群组。好，大群的、小群的，在这个整个社群媒体，我们的同步的沟通。所以像比如说有一篇新闻稿，我们一定是先传赖给他，然后呢，再email 再补发这样子，对，就很不一样，沟通的方式不一样。台湾还是几乎都是用赖在联络。
好，谢谢，thank you, Sharon. So basically, Sharon is talking about is sharing that LINE is the main communication, one of the main communication channel with the media. So basically, usually they will share the press once they have a press release. She will share it to the media via LINE. The application first, and then she will further share that with the email as well. So that would be something slightly a little bit different from the mainland China market.
Thank you very much. Nui, I don't know whether we still have time. Just
yeah, we have to move on to another market. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon.
I didn't know that LINE was also big for you guys because Line is huge for Thailand.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, we can talk about that another time. Can I have the next slide, please?
Okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you. Line also is my very important client now.
Line is also a good, it's also a client, yeah. Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
again, Pian. Thank you.
Okay.
And now
Thank
I
you.
want to introduce Stacy coming from Singapore. Is
Hi,
Stacy,
everyone.
yeah,
Hi,
is Stacy
Pat.
with us? Was able to make it today? Because I heard you were, there was something that might have prevented you from joining us
Yes.
today.
Yes,
Okay?
very happy to be here after all.
Okay, great. Stacy, could you do a short intro about the right spin, and then you can get into a few minutes discussion with Heiko. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So for the right spin, we are a full service boutique agency in Singapore. We've been around since the year 2000, so that means we are 22 years old this year. So the clients that we support are from many industries, including like technology, healthcare, lifestyle, engineering, and not-for-profit, and others. So again, very happy to be here because I actually have a little family emergency over the past few days, but I mean, this is a good session. Definitely don't want to miss it. So I think for Singapore, I would like to just get the ball rolling by maybe asking Heike a question. So I think you mentioned just now, Heike, that the global vaccination wave is hitting many countries and many industries, and definitely the media and PR industry as well. So as we know, it takes time and effort to build up relationships with the media.
Yeah.
So we definitely do not want to see them moving around too much, right?
Yeah.
But from your study, is this something we should be concerned about for the Singapore market? Do you see media expected to be like moving out of their roles in this year?
Yeah, it is a very good question, and thanks for that, Stacey. We should rather be in the same room because we are both in Singapore. I don't know why we're separated by screen. But you know what's actually interesting to note is that the resignation rates for Singapore has not been a major concern for them to move into a different industry altogether. It seems that they're still remaining in journalism. So if they were to have left their current roles, they would be moving to a different company within within the journalism industry still. And a lot of them have said that they're looking to either be promoted or have a change in the role within their own companies as well. I don't think that actually means that they are looking to get a totally different role outside of journalism within their own organizations, but they are looking to garner a little bit of expertise in other areas of the media rather than just being editorial, because we did survey largely, well, actually we only surveyed editorial professionals, so not so much of the other media professionals, because there are people who does obviously video editing and things like that. So we did not go out to speak to too many of those people. So I don't think that's a concern. Having said that, obviously Telemedia runs a media intelligence platform, so we see and track journalist moves, and there are a lot of journalist moves. It just happens to be within the industry and consistent with what's happening in Hong Kong, a little bit more in Singapore though. We have seen an uptick in people hiring in bigger organizations within Singapore, within the media organizations in Singapore. So I guess that's a good thing to see. And if we are concerned about journalist moves and keeping that relationship, perhaps if they move to a different organization, they're still within journalism, that's not too much of a concern. But the new ones that are coming in, perhaps those are the ones that we need to start tapping on to build relationships with. And if I can just do a plug there, then that's when you actually use Telemedia to identify who the new journalists are.
Right. Yeah, that's wonderful to hear that the media is not like, there isn't a very big concern of them moving out of the industry. But I think the other important thing to note is that once we have built a good working relationship with a journalist, I think that the great thing is that he or she will carry this wherever they go. So they will not forget us. And actually sometimes them moving to either another role or actually another company actually lead to new opportunities. So yeah, I think it's not a bad thing.
I think that's a very good point. And I just want to make an additional point. I think sometime last year, or I think very early on last year in 2021 or late 2020, we ran a webinar on what we titled as going to the other side, right? So, you know, how journalists always say moving to the PR is going to the dark side. But we identified that that is a trend that we've seen of journalists moving to communications. And it's just important to note that there are a lot more journalists who see their skills very transferable in the communications industry, much less so from communications industry into journalism. There are still those happening. We do see them, but very, very little as compared to journalism into communications.
Right. Okay. I think also, I mean, another interesting perspective is that because of COVID, we have experience with like media actually wanting to join our agency because their job has changed. The nature of their job has changed. It has become very isolated in a way, because they do not need to chase stories by being on site. So they feel that they want to be back into that kind of dynamic environment whereby they got to work with colleagues and, you know, it's a lot of team collaborations and stuff. So I'm not sure whether that will continue to change, because Singapore is now very much back to the old days in terms of how we operate. Yeah,
I think that's a very good point, because again, this survey was released in March, where, you know, actually, if you remember in March, Omicron in Singapore was still going quite wild. So, you know, it was what we found here, I think, would be quite a stark difference to how things are over the past 2 months. I think just over 8 weeks or so, things have changed quite significantly. And to your point about journalists wanting to join agencies like yours, I think it's also important for us to, when we take on our friends from the journalism fraternity to join communications, is that they need to understand sometimes there's a bit of culture shock for them to see that contacting the media is just not the only thing that communications practitioners do. There are more to just, you know, reaching out to the media and sending them press releases. So because the journalists often see that is the only thing communications practitioners do, or rather that's a big part of what they do. So it's always good for them if they actually understood what comms professionals do, because I think that they can contribute a lot in the communications industry, especially in content production. Jackie highlighted earlier that lots of companies are producing their own content sites to share out there, because there's an opportunity and space for you to be able to do so rather than going directly into the media. So in doing so and producing useful, good, and content that are engaging, these journalists will be able to contribute in our scope as communications professionals.
Right. I think you've just made very important points, Heiko. And I believe we have time for one more question. So I would like to talk a little bit more about the use of different tools. So I believe, Heiko, you mentioned just now that press releases are still very relevant. And another interesting thing that I've seen from the survey is the use of high-res photos. Yeah. So I just want to talk a little bit about that, because it seems that photos should no longer just be an afterthought, right? It should be part of the whole package when we actually pitch to journalists. So what kind of findings actually are surfaced from the survey in this regard, Heiko?
Okay, if I may link back to not just the survey, but from my conversations with journalists during COVID, while COVID was still quite widespread, and journalists are largely working from home. What you've mentioned, Stacey, the photos should really not be an afterthought, because it means now with restrictions and with reduced resources and manpower issues, journalists are no longer able to go out with a photographer to take good pictures while you invite them to an event or to something for them to cover. It just does not happen that way anymore. They need things to be sent to them for them to be able to use the moment it reaches their mailbox, and for them to get those stories out quickly. So if we are not able to provide those pictures, it just means that that story may not get the prominence as how they want it to be, or as how you would want it to be. And I'm sure you would agree that story pictures is a huge difference to non-story pictures, be it in a printed format or an online format. So with these limitations that journalists are having, I think it's important for us communications professionals to be able to support them in areas where we can, especially, we have access to our clients, we have access to our internal stakeholders if you are in-house, to produce these content, and the prerogative and the advantages in your end, you'll be able to control this rather than, from a journalist perspective. So you'll be able to package something for them. And I'm sure, you would love to see that if your press releases are produced word for word with the picture that you've taken, your clients, your bosses, your internal stakeholders are really going to be happy about it.
Right. I just have one last point to make before I pass back to Patrick, is that talking about photos, right? One interesting trend also is that it's not just the traditional photos that we are talking about, but more journalists are actually venturing into multimedia stories, whereby, for example, Straits Times in Singapore, if you go to their website, there's actually like a multimedia section, and they take really good photos. The most recent one being the one on solar panels. So it's an immersive kind of story, whereby you can actually go into all the different wonderful solar panel installations in Singapore and, browse through. And I think the message and the impact, because of the multimedia nature of the story, is really quite different from what the traditional print text-based story would be like.
Exactly. And those, if I just make a final point there, at the very least, if you're not able to produce that magnitude or that impressive multimedia work that they are able to replicate or be able to help publish, infographics is a very useful tool for them to actually use, because at the very least, infographics will give the bite-sized information that they can publish. You must remember now that media don't just publish on their main site. They publish on socials, they publish on Facebook, they send out their news out on Telegram. They need something to be able to accompany those posts. Infographics is a great way to do it.
Right. Thanks for that. Totally agree. I think these are things that we can so-called bring to our clients and reinforce to them as well, like how things have evolved.
Thanks, Stacey.
Thanks, you.
Stacey. Okay, so save the best for last, right? So we're now on to the Thai market. Can we move on to the next slide? So just a little quick introduction. The first half of my career was actually in corporate as head of marketing, where I was doing like campaign communications, events, and IMCs. And before starting my own agency, I was also with the WPP agency, actually a Singapore one, MDK. I don't know if you ever met them, Heigl, but I worked a lot in.
I'm old enough to know of it.
Okay, only old enough. But I sat half the time in the JWT office because we were the partner at the time for comms, PR related activities for many of their accounts. So so that's a little bit of background. And Brand Now was born in 2008, and we're heavy on brand communication, so internal as well as external. PR is one of our tools, as well as many other activities. So sometimes social, digital events, so on and so forth. And looking forward to having the events come back and seeing more people in real life, other than on screen. So I looked through the report for Thailand, and it reflects a lot about our activities when it comes to like pitching. Definitely 86% of the pitches have to go through the email first. But the thing where they said, like, where you guys said 71% is mostly chat on Facebook, I found that, like, but Line, I would have thought like Line would have came out more prominent than say Facebook Messenger, because Line, we have, I think, 40 million users, give or take. We're the second largest outside of Japan. So so that was an interesting finding for me. And then LinkedIn being the 23rd, I like to see LinkedIn come more online for the Thai market, because it will, half the time is identifying where did this reporter move to sometime. And then they change phone numbers, and then we gotta look them up again or try to chat with them, and then get a whether it's on Facebook or somewhere else to try to get their new contact information. But what I wanted to talk about, Heigl, was about the shifting between the generations now. Was the we're going, X-Gen was prominent, but they said by the time 2025, we're going to have 75% of the workforce being Gen Y.
Yeah.
So, and that also shifts the way that the generation consumes the media. And I was wondering, what do you have on that aspect?
And again, this is perhaps not an aspect that we covered specifically in the survey, but I'd like to be able to share my experience in speaking with Thai media and new media that are coming up there that have become more prominent in recent years. So we've seen a proliferation of new media coming up in Thailand that may not always be given the attention that it probably deserves by communications professionals. And I think that's an important area for PR professionals to be looking into, because these media do not always work in the traditional sense of how a media is usually run. So if we are talking about likes of your Thairat or the Nation and all, we know those will keep on continuing being in the conversation and being important. And there are journalists there who've been there forever, at the start of their career and coming up to the end of their careers, and they're still there. And you need to build relationships with those people. But these new generation of journalists that are coming into the picture, joining different types of media, they seem to be working in a very different way. Although I still do believe that the areas of how they are engaging on social media and all that are still going to be very, very relevant, because what we found on the survey was 71% on Facebook Messenger. I think 34% online. Honestly, I find that a little bit odd as well, but perhaps they want to build that relationship on Facebook first before they got onto Line later on with PR professionals in the first instance. I'm not sure, but that could be the reason why. And relationships, as we know, are always important in pitching stories in Thailand. With the new generation of the journalists coming into the picture, though, I think it's important that we don't forget that's important to still build relations with the new media and new journalists and identify them early, because they might be the ones that are carrying your stories through for the next 10 years, and you never know what that particular small media may turn into.
So that leads into the next question, because as the generation shifts, the media has also been shifting. And so I've had requests where like, I only want to send my press release, or I only want you to pitch to tier 1 media. And they have certain, you know, because they're coming in from another market and they may have had only exposure to a very small, limited set of media, which they're able to read, because I would say 95% of our media is in Thai and only 5% is actually in English. So what are your thoughts in terms of like pitching to the media in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3?
It is, like I said, it's very important for us to not ignore what's underneath in tier 2, tier 3. And I would also like to make the point that tiering of the media may be starkly different from one organization to another, and from cities as well. Thailand's a big country, so there are hyper local media. If you are targeting your tier 1 media, so to say, that are based in Bangkok, who are being read by, you know, locals, or rather English savvy locals and expats, how much of value does that actually bring to you as a company, as compared to speaking with a hyper local media in Phuket or in Chiang Mai or in many other areas where the media is being consumed by local people? So your stories might get a higher traction, higher views, higher impact in the market that you actually want to get into. So this is especially true, I feel, with companies from other regions going into Thailand. So I do think that, you know, people need to understand that while going to your tier 1 media is important, going to the other ones are as equally important, or if not more important, for the long run. So PR is a long game. You don't do PR for 2 months and then forget about it, and you expect things to still be the same way. So it has to be continuous. So there has to be that strategy and plan for media relations for the long term. And I think specifically for Thailand, the other media will be as equally as important, if not more important.
Yes, thank you for that. I remember when I had asked you about, specifically it was about for a tech company, and you said, well, maybe the tech magazine, even though it's read by less, is actually the tier 1 media for that specific brand, because that's who their real core targeted audience is. So I thought that was a really good advice when I reached out to you that time. I got one question, and this opens the floor for the next few minutes. I apologize, we're running over a little bit. And if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to chime in into the chat, or you can also open your mic. But I got one from John, but he's sorry that he has to go, but we are recording this and I will share it with him, the link afterwards. His question was in regards to, let me read it. This is John from nonprofit sector. I would like to hear the views on sustainable journalism in Asia.
Yeah.
So,
If I can,
because your Asia point of view,
if I can just take that first, I would like to say that has grown in significant importance in markets that I've seen so far. At Singapore, being based in Singapore, I can see that that's something that we have seen to have grown in importance. So much so that if you're actually a user of Telum, and if you understand that we actually have a tool for sectors, that sustainability has been in discussion to be added as a specific sector to be covered, because we have seen that ESG specifically has become a beat and desk in news organizations. This is more prominent in bigger news organizations. I'm talking about your Bloombergs, your Reuters. Straits Times recently in Singapore have created an ESG team. So sustainability as part of that ESG equation has grown in extreme importance and of attention to the media. So the media wants to be covering sustainability, as do they want to cover the other parts of ESG, both the E and Gs as well.
Colleagues from PRN, does anyone else have an input in regards to sustainable journalism?
Yep, maybe I chip in a little bit for Hong Kong. I think we have, because we have a few sustainability ESG clients as well. We actually are working for one of the first ESG awards program locally. The problem with local is we cannot find really a lot of sustainability focused media here. So it's kind of like a mass media thing for now, but we are hoping to be able to groom or see some more specific sector media in sustainability as well. But currently what we are doing mainly is even though it's like a local program, we are getting some traction from more regional ESG and sustainability media. So I guess as Heiko said, it's kind of like a trend coming up. But hopefully we can see more of professional journalists in that area.
Yeah, I must add that it's a welcoming trend I've seen. So the sentiments of ESG teams and desks being created, or ESG reporters being hired or trained up to cover ESG has been a welcoming trend in both communications and the media alike. So people do like to see this happen, and I think it's just going to grow, and it keeps on going to grow.
Yes, this is a subject we will be covering, and I know you guys did like a video. So for those who are more keen to check out the video, because Heiko also shared it with me. If you go onto his platform, you'll find that there was a ESG, I think, panel discussion.
Yes, we did.
Just a few months ago. Yeah.
So my email will be at the end of this webinar. So feel free to contact me to see it. I think it's no longer on our website, but you can message me for it.
Sure. Do I have another input from other colleagues in regards to sustainable journalism? Or do we have other questions from other people? I'm just having a look around in the chat as well, in case somebody posted something. Because I think we're starting to be a little bit over time. So if no one else has any other questions, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so, and I invite Belinda to just close, and then also Heiko.
Yep, so I'm sorry we are a little bit overrun, but I hope you are finding this webinar useful, giving you the right insights to move forward. So here are the contact information of ourselves, and if you're interested to get a full copy of the report, feel free to email us, email Heiko, and then he will be sending you a copy very soon.
Yeah, thank you, Belinda. So actually the report is still available for download on the Telum Media websites. That's www.telummedia.com. So you can just click on the banner which says that download report and then download the survey or something like that. We also have a communications report from last year that you may be interested in the thick of COVID that we produced and published that might be relevant for your work still. I also like to say that if you're not a user of Telum Media yet, if you want to speak to us about using Telum Media, we are a media intelligence platform that gives you access to journalist contacts across the region, largely in markets that we spoke about earlier, and the markets that we actually cover in the survey. So it hopefully will get you to the right media contacts, because they do move around quite a little bit. And the media also are now coming to Telum Media to tell us about what they are writing about. So if they have a story that they're looking to write on ESG, for example, they will be writing to us and putting up what we call a media request. And because this service is complimentary for them, and for our subscribers, they'll be able to benefit from a story that is ready to be written if you can angle your perspectives right for that journalist and for that story. So I hope you find the survey useful and today's discussion useful, and feel free to contact me at my email address on the screen, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And if anyone who's joined the session here are wanting support from any of the PRN members in angling your story, building up your story bank, messages, image bank, feel free to reach out to Belinda, our regional head, or any of us, where we also provided our contact in each of the market slides. Thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
สวัสดีค่ะ
Thank you. Bye bye.